How are you all? So you're learning about fad diets, right? So what have you learned so far? You've learned about vegan diets. What do you know in your broad knowledge? That there's plant-based diets. So I'm on the complete opposite of the spectrum. There is such thing as a carnivore, animal-based diet. And trust me, I've only been doing this for a year, but there's people that do it for 20 years.
So you only eat meat?
I only eat meat. So, as a question to you all, what do you think will happen? Just in your mind, what do you think will happen if you just eat meat for a year? Low fiber, yeah. Do you think you'll get constipated?
Yeah.
I can reassure you, I'm not going to describe it, but I have perfectly good stool, no constipation. What else do you think will happen? Atherosclerosis.
Like, is it breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
Well, I only have 2 meals a day. I don't have anything, I haven't eaten yet today, and I have my first meal about 2 o'clock. And when you eat a lot of meat, you don't actually need to eat as much.
Bread?
No, I don't eat bread.
Oh,
It has to come
do
from
you
animals.
eat
Meat with nothing else, like nothing on the side, just meat.
Just
not even sauce?
Raw meat?
I've eaten raw liver, but I don't recommend eating.
Do you eat the sauce?
No.
What?
sauce.
You don't eat
Piece of meat.
Well, it has to be animal based. Usually, 95% of the time, I'm just eating meat.
Gravy with
But the other 5%, I'm sometimes eating fish and occasionally fruit, because I'll let you know later, animal-based diets can include fruit, because if you eat vegetables, I haven't eaten vegetable for 365 days. I started last year, the 22nd of June, because as I'll get to you, but what I'll explain soon is vegetables. There's actually a thing called plant toxicity spectrum. So my whole life I was allergic to nuts, beans, legumes, and these are all the most toxic plants. Because people tell you that plants don't have a defense mechanism, right? But they actually do. They do have a defense mechanism, and they use chemicals. So for most people, vegetables are healthy, but for me, the chemicals affect me more than the benefits from the vegetables. And so I can't eat vegetables. All right, can we go to the next slide? So this is Inuit tribe, the Maasai. So people tell you, oh, you can't just eat meat. If you just eat meat for a year, 20 years, you'll die, right? Well, these are tribes that live, these are Eskimos. And there's no plants. There's no plants up there.
And these guys should know a little bit about that, because if they did year 11 food studies, we talk about the Sani people, and the Sani people doesn't even
No, it just did.
And these people have been around for thousands of years, and they don't eat anything but meat. And you know, it's not raw meat in this case, but go to the next slide, please. As you can see here, studies show that they have robust health and remarkably low incidences of modern disease, including heart disease, type 2 diabetes, cancer, osteoporosis. Next slide. I'm not going to read all of this, but you can see that the incidence of heart disease based on autopsy studies, just in 1% of Alaskan Inuit tribes, they're much lower. Only 1% of Alaskans have heart disease versus US, which has 30% in 1964 when they did the studies. Atherosclerosis, osteoporosis, all of the diseases were much lower when you just ate meat. Keep going. Diabetes is lower as well. Look at this, Hong Kong. They eat the most meat and they have the longest lifespans. Now let me tell you a bit about myself. That was me a year ago. That was my hands. As you can see, I have nothing wrong with me now. Keep going. This is before. This is when I had a standard diet. That was my foot. Look, honestly, I was dying. I was in hospital, and the doctor said that if I didn't go on like steroids and heavy medication, antibiotics, I would be dead in a week. So I had sepsis in my blood, and I was really sick. And you know, it's hard to say this, but in Western medicine, there's just this. They can only offer so much, and then they say, "I'm sorry, I can't help you." And so that's what I got to. I spent 23 years using Western medicine, using steroid creams, which all they do is just block the suppression. What that is, eczema. Really bad eczema, which led to infection, which led to sepsis, which almost caused my death. So all they do is block the expression. And it's just like if you're driving a car and then you see the petrol saying you're out of petrol, instead of actually filling it up with petrol, you just put a Band-Aid over the top and say, it's all good. That's what the steroids do. and that's Western medicine. They actually don't say anything about diet. See, a lot of people right now are studying to become doctors and lawyers, and they think that diet's not important. It's actually hugely important. Western medicine failed me for 23 years, and I can say that with confidence because the only thing that helped me is diet. I wouldn't be standing right now. I'd be in my bed. I couldn't move, literally, for 3 years. I wouldn't be here standing right now unless I started this carnivore diet. So it does sound like a fad diet, but this is life-changing for me. Next slide. That's my hands now. That was 100 days into the diet. They're much better now. Next. Next. So this is, before you play it, this is a reel I made, and in a week it had 5,000 shares and 150,000 views.
For the past 3 years, I've been suffering from chronic debilitating eczema. My eczema was so bad at one stage, I developed sepsis in my blood. Had I not been hospitalized and put on steroids and antibiotics, the doctor said I would have died in the next week. For the past 100 days, I've only eaten meat. Doctors say eczema is incurable, but I've proven 99% of doctors wrong. There are hundreds out there who have cured their autoimmune diseases through the carnivore diet. I am one of them.
Next slide. So you know, doctors, they do say eczema is incurable. I actually don't have eczema at all now. I had it for 23 years, my whole life. So this is Dr. Kiltz. He's an influencer, 100,000 followers play it for me.
Hi, my name is Dr. Robert Kiltz, and I am here to help you improve your life. Are you tired of feeling sluggish and unhealthy? Are you ready to change your diet and transform your life and health?
There's no way I could have discovered the carnivore diet had I not gone through the journey that I did. If I was to tell myself 10, 15 years ago, just eat more meat, I wouldn't have believed myself. The only way I could have got there is through the suffering that I had.
No one's willing to try crazy diets unless you're dying. So basically Western medicine said, sorry, no more solutions. So I said, okay, I'm going to try alternate therapies. I'm going to try funny diets. And it worked. I mean, if in your shoes, there'd be no reason to try a diet like this because you're all healthy. Right? But if you lose your health, suddenly you're failing and you can't move anymore. This has cured many people, not just eczema, arthritis, Crohn's disease, diabetes. There's Harvard studies that show that people who are on a carnivore diet, you know, you have to inject yourself with insulin if you eat sugar. But if you just eliminate all sugar, carnivore diets mean your body functions not on, it doesn't provide its energy from glucose anymore. You're in a state called ketosis because you're burning fat. And so you don't need to take insulin. All the diabetics were cured, 100%. All right, next. That's me as a kid. Next slide. So as you can see as a kid, I had eczema. It's kind of hard to see, but my whole life I had eczema. Now I am completely eczema-free. I mean, my whole life, even in this school, I was ashamed to wear shorts. In the summer, I'd be wearing pants and long clothes because I was so embarrassed. Even teaching the piano, I'm a pianist. Kids would be like, what's wrong with your hands? And I would get bullied a lot because I had eczema on my face and I just feel so embarrassed. And now, I'm just a different person. All thanks to this diet. All right, so I want to talk about some of the myths around the carnivore diet because the first things they tell you is that if you eat too much meat, if you eat too much fat, that you'll get atherosclerosis, like heart disease. You'll have plaque build up in your arteries. And I'm going to show you that it's actually not true. Next. It's actually propaganda. You know, you hear about propaganda in like, oh, it's Russian propaganda, Russian or Chinese propaganda. But the thing is, there's propaganda here in Western civilizations too. And meat being a killer is one of them. So, okay, go back, sorry. So when you eat, just a little background on fat, cholesterol. So you're obviously been told that if you eat a lot of cholesterol, what happens? What happens if you eat too much cholesterol? You might get overweight, your arteries might get clogged, right? That's what people tell you? Hypertension, yeah. What if I told you that's not true? I get blood tests all the time. my LDL levels, which is cholesterol. So this is how to understand cholesterol. When you eat food, when you eat fat, first stage is chylomicron, huge. Then it turns into VLDL, which is very large density lipoprotein. IDL, intermediate, LDL, low density. HDL, that's the good cholesterol. So basically, what happens, just a bit of medicine for you, it just goes, when you eat, these fats deliver proteins and nutrients to your body, and then, so basically it's delivering cargo until the end. When it finishes delivering its cargo, it reduces in density until it's LDL, very small. Then finally, when it's LDL, it returns back to the liver. Okay? So next slide. So it actually doesn't clog up your arteries unless, so hang on. In healthy LDL, liver reabsorbs it perfectly fine. Next slide. Next slide. Yes, but next slide. I'll go back to this slide. LDL doesn't actually clog your arteries unless it becomes glycated. What does glycated mean? Any guesses? Yeah, so it mixes with sugar. So go back to slide. What causes the atherosclerosis? Yes, it is the fat, but it's not the fat. It's fat in combination with sugar. It's not fat alone. Sugar is what causes the atherosclerosis. Sugar is the real demon in society. Try it again. Next slide. Next. Okay, so this is starting to clog your arteries. Next. So what happens? LDL becomes glycated. I'm not going to stay too long on this. Basically, the liver can't reabsorb it because it's glycated, it's damaged. So what happens? It just starts to clog your arteries. It just starts to float around. And then here's the lining of your arterial wall. And trust me, I did so much research into this. I got a Bachelor of Science, but I'm not studying medicine. But I did so much research into this because the doctors were basically saying, there's no cure for you. Good luck. So I wanted to know that I wasn't going to kill myself by doing this diet. So I spent months and months studying the actual literature and medical journals. And you'll see medical journal references soon. So this is the endothelium, that's the lining of your arteries. And basically what happens is you've got these things called macrophages that they're like Pac-Man, and this is the LDL that's damaged, and it just absorbs it. And then it just accumulates on the side of those arteries. Next. So that's a macrophage. Next. This is Dr. Paul Mason. He's actually an Australian doctor that's carnivore based. And these people get laughed at by normal doctors. It's like, the carnivore diet, what a joke. You know, most doctors just say, you're just going to die in 6 months if you try this. We're thriving. I'm thriving. I've never been healthier my whole life.
It's quite convenient. They have a very strong affinity for it. So what they do, the LDL particle binds with the scavenger receptor and it engulfs it, a little bit like a Pac-Man. And then, eventually, these macrophages end up so full of LDL that we call them foam cells. And here you can see a foam cell with all the lipid droplets inside. And this is the way in which damaged LDL ends up lining the inside of our blood vessels. And this is the end result. That's a significant narrowing. And that is caused by LDL that's been damaged by sugar.
Okay, so this sounds like anti-science, right? But I'm showing you that this is actually based on real science. And there's nothing wrong with cholesterol. You can eat as much meat as you want. You can eat as much fat and bacon as you want. You're not going to get obese. You're not going to die of heart disease. It's only if you eat too much sugar that that happens. Understand? Next. Now, it's important to have a critical mindset. Even what I'm saying. Everything I'm saying is backed with research. But even what I'm saying, I encourage you all to think critically about everything you see. Me, your doctors, everything. Next. Next. All right, play this.
Science is now catching up. So the American College of Cardiology earlier this year published this state-of-the-art review on saturated fat consumption. And after a complete analysis of all the literature, they've actually concluded that we should freely consume meat, eggs and dairy and not worry about the saturated fat. They actually found that the mortality rate for the group that was given the vegetable and seed oil actually increased by 62%. This is a large-scale, randomised controlled trial over a number of years, and yet the data wasn't originally published. It was, decades later when it was actually published. And if you have a look here now, if you come and have a look here, you can see that this is the intervention group. This is the group that was given the oil. This is the control group that still had their regular intake of saturated fat. And this is the death rate along the side. So the higher this line, then the worse the outcome. And you can clearly see that there's more people dying in the vegetable oil group than they were in the saturated fat consuming group. Now this kind of data has basically been buried, and it's not the only one.
Yeah, see? What's your chips cooked in? If you go to Nando's, you go to McDonald's. Oils, seed oils. What's that? No.
Just make
Look. I know it sounds really hard to believe. Like, I struggle to even have dinner with people going out and eating because everything's cooked in seed oils. Spaghetti, anything. But trust me, the suffering I had, I'll ask you in a second. I'll get to you in a second. So the suffering I had before was so bad that the life I'm living now is actually much better having cut out everything.
Do you eat like salt?
Yeah, I have salt, actually have salt. So the three things I usually rely on is meat, salt and water.
Yeah. If you go back to eating, like if you stop the meat diet, will your extra come back?
Most likely. But having said that, it's only been a year and I'm starting to reintroduce foods. Like I'm eating a lot more fruit now and sometimes there's pushback, my eczema starts to re-emerge, but mostly it's okay if I take it slow.
Do you season like the meat?
Sorry?
Do you season with the...
Oh no, I just put salt and that's it. I actually don't even cook with olive oil. Olive oil is the least toxic of seed oils, most healthy, like versus canola oil or avocado oil. But I don't even cook with that. I cook with fat. I go to the butcher and I ask for fat trimmings and I cook with that.
Just
Can you eat like the skin of the chicken at KFC?
Oh, that's what I was going to ask you.
No, I wouldn't.
You don't? You
No.
like take the skin off and
I wouldn't even eat at KFC.
Oh.
Because of what it's cooked in, right?
Yeah.
Oil.
It just soaks right through.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so it's important to always get your blood test. This is my blood test a few months ago. The doctor called me up and says, this is horrible. Your LDL levels are 5 times higher than they should be. You could die in the next 5 minutes. And then I just laughed because I've done my research. The research says if your triglyceride levels, these are technical terms, triglyceride level is below 0.5, then it's okay. Mine's 0.6, slightly out. HDL, if it's below 2, mine's 1.8, slightly below. But if you go to the next slide, it's hard to see in the white, but basically if your ratio of triglycerides to HDL is below 0.8, which this is mine, then you're healthy. So I'm becoming my own holistic doctor, and basically I'm fine. And the funny thing is, the local doctors who have spent 10 years in medicine, they honestly, all due respect to doctors, I know I have friends who are studying medicine right now, but they're not educated on diet at all. Okay? When I was 13, I went to the doctor and I noticed that when I had McDonald's, my eczema would get worse. And I'd say to the doctor, if I eat McDonald's, is that going to make my eczema worse? And he said, no, there's no studies that prove that. That's just in your head. So, I was already questioning the doctors when I was 13. There are answers. There's, 1 in 5 people nowadays have autoimmune disease. It's skyrocketing. People have eczema, asthma. Do any of you have asthma or eczema or autoimmune disease? Yeah, see, it's getting more and more common. And it's because of food. It's because of what we're eating. Next. Okay, let's talk about cancer. Does meat cause cancer? Because the IARC, the International Agency of Research on Cancer, says it does. Okay, This is propaganda, more Western propaganda. You wouldn't let your child smoke. Like smoking, eating bacon, sausage, and other processed meats is linked to cancer. All right, next slide. So this is International Agency of Research on Cancer, and they basically said that if you eat processed meat every day, only 50 grams, and your likelihood of getting cancer is increased by 18%. Next slide. And if you eat normal meat, red meat, your likelihood of cancer is increased by 17% for eating 100 grams every day. Next slide. It's wrong. Next. This is a medical journal study. This is the stuff they're not telling you. Just because it's on the news doesn't mean it's right. This is the people that are not shown on the news. This is a medical journal study. Unprocessed red meat and processed meat consumption. Okay, next. They said, sorry, what was that?
I'm talking about
You're confused? So what you said?
I'm vegetarian, so it's all.
Okay, well that's good. You know, I have a lot of friends who are vegetarian. You know, a lot of people actually do well on the vegetarian diet because they're eliminating seed oils. You see? They're eliminating like all the junk food. So they do well. Okay? But there are a lot of people that have actually cured themselves on celery drinks. What works for me doesn't work for everyone. Okay? This might be a solution for some people. Other people, it might be veganism, you know? But a lot of the time, meat is demonized. People say, you know, it's awful that you're eating meat. You're destroying the planet. You're going to kill yourself. And I'm going to get to that at the end of the presentation as well. That if you eat grass-fed beef, you're actually not destroying the planet. Actually, no, here.
Wait, so do you eat it processed?
Processed? No, I actually don't eat processed meat, like bacon and all that.
No, you don't eat minced meat. It's just...
Well, minced meat's not actually bad. The reason why it is bad for me is because it's like, they spray it with sulfur to preserve it because it's all exposed, and that sulfur just really messes with me.
We actually have for lunch.
What do I have for lunch?
Yeah.
Just lamb, cow, anything that comes from an animal. Chicken, not so much because they are fed grains, and so what the chicken eats, I eat. That's why I go for
chicken
chicken.
eats, you eat.
Yeah, you basically what the chicken's eating is then stored inside the chicken, which then inflames me. You see what I mean?
It's a chicken that eats me.
Good one. No. If it's grass-fed, like some of it's pasture-raised chickens, I can eat that.
Do you like struggle to afford meat?
Oh, all the time. I haven't had a relaxing day in months because I'm just working so hard in order to pay the bills just to eat meat. Yeah.
So
it is an expensive diet.
Brad's not advocating that this is a lifestyle or something that everyone should take on. He's just saying that it's what may be considered a trend or a diet that you could follow if you needed to heal your body in some particular way.
That's right. If you have an illness, I'd recommend it. But the thing is, like, a lot of people avoid meat because they think it's bad for you. So I think if there is one takeaway from this, there's actually nothing wrong with eating meat. It's actually one of the most powerful superfoods on the planet. We've been eating this for thousands of years, and as you can see, the Inuit tribes, which I showed you at the start, they're thriving. As you saw, they have lower levels of atherosclerosis, lower levels of osteoporosis, of heart disease, of cancer. They're fine. It's America that had the 30%. Only 1% of the Eskimos had it. So what does that tell you? Clearly, the carnivore diet's working. And why wouldn't it work? We've been like this for thousands of years as humans, right? During the Ice Age, there's no plants. What do we eat? Animals. You know, there's an interesting quote by a doctor called Paul Saladino. He's a carnivore doctor, and he says, if you were to live in the wild, what's the first thing you do? Eat animals. You know, most animals are edible. Most plants are inedible. There's a movie called Into the Wild. Has any of you seen that movie?
Oh. Into the Wild.
Yeah. So basically, it's a true story about a guy called Christopher McCandless. And he went in, he just hated society, right? So he's, the man, the system. So he just wanted to live in the wild and just eat whatever he could. So he ended up dying by eating these potatoes.
I love potatoes.
But there was wild potatoes. So I'm just saying, most plants, look, it's good that you're a vegetarian, but I'm saying if you were to live in the wild, most things would kill you if you just were to go out and start eating plants. This is what happened to Christopher McCandless. He saw these wild potatoes, he was like, I'm going to try that. He died. Yeah, but like even cooked, you got to be very careful what you're eating. The thing is, most animals, it's fine to eat them, unless it's a blue ring octopus. Like most animals aren't going to kill you if you eat it.
Chicken, right? You get salmonella.
Oh yeah, but you have to cook it.
You don't drink, do you?
I don't drink. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't, everything. All I eat is meat. That's my one vice. So does meat cause cancer? This is an independent study. This is an independent study. The IARC recommendations are based on observational studies. That's called epidemiology. So epidemiology is where they confound. So it's like, well, what's an example? For example, they say meat causes cancer, but they base the research on people who might be drinking. You see? It's not a clinical study. It's just based on like anecdotes. You know what I mean? Alright, so it's high risk of confounding, limited to establishing casual inferences. Next slide. They didn't conduct rigorous standards of evidence. It's not like, they're basically saying, how can you conclude it causes cancer? The evidence isn't rigorous enough, and yet everyone believes it causes cancer. Look at this. They didn't explicitly address public values. Trustworthiness. They're questioning the trustworthiness of this international agency of cancer research. That's shocking. And yet we all believe the propaganda. I don't know why, personally, they put it out on the news that meat's so bad for you. Who knows? But it's not true. It's all false.
Are you being studied?
Have I been studied?
Yeah, for like eating a carnivore diet.
No, I haven't been.
Oh.
But there are a lot of people that are on the carnivore diet that are studied though. There is heaps of research done on people like myself. So they did a study of themselves involving 54,000 participants. Basically, no effect on cancer, on cardiometabolic outcomes. Next. Yeah, a lot of participants. And this is a clinical medical journal. So it's not propaganda, it's from a medical journal. The panel suggests that adults continue current unprocessed red meat consumption. Next slide. Eat meat as much as you want, you're not going to die. Alright, next slide. Okay. Before I go on, this is starting to. Sorry for the vegetarians in the room, but this is going to start to look at. This is going to start to look at plants, and if you can tolerate plants, it's great. But for people like me, there is toxins. This is what they don't tell you. There's a lot of benefits to vegetables, but it's just like a drug, right? The drugs could be good for you, but they have side effects. There's also side effects in vegetables. There are toxins that you can't ignore.
How do you get your vitamins?
Say again? How do I get my vitamins? In organs, in the liver, for example, there is so much vitamins. There's actually a slide on that later on. Actually, this is so
Australia now.
Arbitrary.
This is the vitamins. I'm really happy you asked me that question. Look at beef liver. So this is vitamins per 100 grams. So this is everything you need. They tell you that if you just eat meat, you get scurvy and die, right? You need vitamin C. You need oranges. Well, actually, look how much vitamin C is in beef liver. Let's see, vitamin C. 25 milligrams in beef liver. In its raw state. So that's why I eat liver raw sometimes. Well, if you eat too much liver, you can actually get vitamin A toxicity because it's that strong in vitamin A. Look at it, 4,968 micrograms. So there's just so much vitamin A that if you eat it, you could get vitamin toxicity. So I actually don't eat it too often, maybe like once a fortnight or once a week max. There was actually studies done in World War II, I believe. People who didn't want to go to war. Like, I don't want to fight in that war, it's not my fight. So they're called conscientious objectors. And so they did unethical studies on these people. So the people that refused to go to war, they basically tested scurvy, the limits of scurvy on So they restricted their vitamin C consumption. And then they basically proved that if you only have 10 milligrams of vitamin C, that's all you need to survive. So there, you've got 25 milligrams.
Just the egg yolk?
25 milligrams.
The whole egg.
So it's more than I need.
So what is the egg white?
You have, you die of scurvy in 3 months. And it's been a year for me, so.
What's scurvy?
Yeah. Does anyone want to explain what scurvy is?
Lack of vitamins.
Alright.
I literally just said it's a pirate disease. I don't know anything.
Okay. Does anyone know what scurvy is? Yeah, vitamin C, citrus. So I think Captain Cook. I'm not sure if it was Captain Cook, but one of the first fleet, they had issues with scurvy because they didn't have enough vitamin C, and so all their gums started to bleed and all their teeth fell out and all their skin started to fall off. And that's what happens if you don't have enough vitamin C. So that's what people would say, that if you don't eat any vitamin C, that's what happens to you. But the thing is, what people don't say is that there's actually vitamin C in meat. And there's sufficient vitamin C in beef liver. Everything you need is in there. In fact, I don't know if there's any vegans in the room, but 92% of vegans are B12 deficient.
Ooh.
Yeah, so if you have, and that can lead to serious problems with heart disease. And you can get the most B12 in beef liver. Okay, here. So spinach. Is spinach good for you?
No.
It might be good for you, but it's not good for me because, and it might be not, like, look, toxins, benefits. You have to see, does the benefits outweigh the toxins or vice versa?
So you said you only need 10 micrograms of vitamin C. How often is that?
Per day. Okay, so oxalates. This is something in spinach. There's a beautiful book if you're interested in the carnivore diet. I suggest you read it. It's called The Carnivore Code. And basically they said these people have kidney disease. They have kidney stones. And they think, oh wow, I have kidney stones, I should eat spinach. And so when they eat spinach, the kidney stones actually gets worse. Because of oxalates. Oxalates are big crystals. And they're the literal cause of the kidney stones. Next. Ricin. Any Breaking Bad fans?
What? Ricin?
Does anyone know what ricin is? What is ricin? There's a lot of assassinations done on like the presidents. Usually, what's happened in the past, like even to Obama and George Bush, they have these letters saying, you know, we're going to make the White House a ghost town. Basically, he opens a letter and it's powdered with all of this thing called ricin. And basically, if you eat it or you touch it, you die in 36 to 72 hours. It's a poison. And this is in beans. So this is, next slide. So this is the spectrum of plant toxicity I was telling you about before. Now this is like the health of diets, right? This is like nutritional medicine. Now this really spoke to me because when I was a kid, I was allergic to nuts, I was allergic to legumes, and so I'm like, wow, this is what none of the doctors are telling you about. Like, shouldn't they be screaming this from the rooftops? Like, everyone, like, in primary schools, you're not even allowed to bring nuts to school sometimes because the kids are that allergic. And look, it makes sense. Spectrum of plant toxicity. This is how the plants defend themselves. They poison you so that you don't eat it. Why don't they poison you with fruits? Because the plant wants you to eat it. They want you to eat it so that you disseminate the seed so that you can grow more plants. Makes sense, doesn't it? That's evolution. Alright, so that's why I'm starting to eat a bit more fruits. I can tolerate avocado, which is a non-sweet fruit, and coconuts. Both are acceptable on the keto diet. Keto diet's like another meat diet. Next. This is my food pyramid. Salt and calcium, fat, eggs, and muscle meat.
You eat eggs?
Well, I don't eat eggs, but this is a carnivore diet. This is general carnivore diet. I don't eat eggs.
Have you eaten like a heart before?
Yeah, all the time. It's a bit hard to, psychologically it's hard. But for me, it's fine. I'm used to it. Okay, so let's talk about global warming. So they tell you that cows are causing global warming, right? With methane and I'm not going to disprove global warming here, but what I'm telling you is that actually eating meat, if it's grass-fed, look, factory farming is terrible. I'm not going to lie about that. But grass-fed beef, this is White Oak Pastures, producer of grass-fed beef. If you were to stop all of the factories right now, the scientists say that you won't be able to reach temperatures that are prior to the pre-industrial era. Make sense? Like you can't. If you just switch off all the factories, it won't be enough. We'll still have heating. So what you need is carbon sinks. You know what I mean by carbon sinks? You need something to suck the carbon out of the atmosphere. The ground, the dirt. A lot of these plants, like trees and plants, they love to suck the carbon, and they're storage of carbon, essentially. So if you have grass-fed beef, if you have regenerative agriculture, basically what's happening is you're storing minus 3.5 pounds of carbon into the soil per pound of meat, which is a net negative, which absolutely eclipses everything you see with Beyond Burger, Impossible Burgers, soybeans. They're releasing 4 pounds of carbon, 3.5 pounds of carbon, 2 pounds of carbon per pound of meat. But we're doing minus 3.5 with grass-fed beef. You're actually saving the planet. You're sucking carbon out of the atmosphere. Next slide.
I think Sam's got a question, right?
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, if you are influencing people to go on this diet, do you think a lot of people would go for sustainable products rather than...
It's a good question, yeah. It depends on what you can afford. Yeah. So, I think most people, since it's so expensive, probably wouldn't be able to afford grass-fed beef. So, yeah, it is unfortunate that factory farms are a thing, because this slide says, look, factory farms contribute to 1.9% of all greenhouse emissions. This is compared to agricultural crops, like in vegetarian. In vegan diets, you have this thing called monocrop agriculture, where you have thousands and thousands of acres of just one thing, like corn, or one thing, like soybeans. And what it does is it actually destroys the soil. So this is a biologist. His name is Alan Savory. This is his TED Talk. And this video, he's basically talking about the importance of, how the only way to tackle global warming. This is what he argues. There is only one solution, these are his words, to fighting global warming, and it's with this thing called regenerative agriculture, which is like grass-fed beef. So this is how important cows are to saving the planet. They're blaming cows for desertification, basically. The context of this is, he was in Africa, and he wanted to, all of this land was desertified, and he basically blamed the cows, so he got rid of all the cows. It was still desertified. So then he blamed the elephants. So he got the president of Africa at the time to shoot 40,000 elephants. And 40,000 elephants were killed, and it was still desertified. And then he realized, finally, it's not the animals' fault. The animals actually work in symbiosis, meaning in harmony, with the land. And so if you take the animals away from the land, basically the land dies as well. Okay? There's a place called the Serengeti, where there's thousands of cows and wildebeest roaming. Thousands just packed in these small acres, like in a square kilometre, there's thousands of them, right? And if that was true, that cows cause desertification, if they cause desertification, then all of that land should be fallow and arid and desert, right? But it's not, it's actually thriving. So this is why he proves that the cows are actually helping the grass grow, because they're putting fertilizer on it, they're urinating, they're pushing the seeds down, and once they finish eating all the food, they wander off to the next place, and they leave that, and by the time they come back, it's all grown even faster because of all the fertilizer that left behind. Okay? This is called regenerative agriculture. This is really what's going to save the planet. This is a solution to global warming.
when we damage soils, you give off carbon. Carbon goes back to the atmosphere. We were once just as certain that the world was flat. We were wrong then, and we are wrong again. To find national parks like this one desertifying as badly as anything in Africa. And there'd been no livestock on this land for over 70 years. And it was that movement that prevented the overgrazing of plants, while the periodic trampling ensured good cover of the soil, as we see where a herd has passed. Now, all of that grass you see above ground has to decay biologically before the next growing season. And if it doesn't, the grassland and the soil begin to die.
The cow has to eat the grass.
To prevent that, we have traditionally used fire.
Or the grass dies.
But fire also leaves the soil bare, releasing carbon. And worse than that, burning 1 hectare of grassland gives off more and more damaging pollutants than 6,000 cars. And we are burning in Africa every single year more than 1 billion hectares of grassland.
That's their solution.
And almost nobody is talking
Burning the
about it.
grass.
I repeat to you, only one option left to climatologists and scientists, and that is to do the unthinkable and to use livestock, bunched and moving, as a proxy for former herds and predators and mimic nature.
Why would you burn
There is
the
no
grass
other
if you use the
alternative left to
cows?
mankind. How to put their animals together into larger herds, plan their grazing to mimic nature,
We're trying to mimic nature.
planning the grazing to mimic nature. I've had to mark the hill because the change is so profound.
That's what happens when you put the cows back on the land. It makes sense, doesn't it? You just put cows on the land, as we've had for thousands of years and millions of years of evolution, and the earth exactly loves what nature intends. Makes sense, right? So, just to summarize, the carnivore diet is not only so much really healthy for you holistically in your own body, you can also use it to help the planet. So the people that say to you, don't eat meat, you're actually destroying the planet. If you eat the right form of meat, like not factory farmed, grass-fed, you're actually helping the planet. All right, so thank you for listening to me today. Appreciate it. So I might ask, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.